Hi, I'm Angelee over here at Shonnard's, here today to talk to you about our raised beds, our vegetable crops, what's in here currently, and what we're transitioning to next for our fall and summer crops. So I'm really excited to get to work on this bed. We really went to town fertilizing it, adding great soil in it back in April. So our vegetables look really great. They produced really well for us, but we're also finding a good amount of weeds in our bed, so it's time to put in the elbow grease to get these guys out. Additionally, I really loved this cauliflower, this graffiti purple cauliflower. It was extremely delicious. It's totally attractive, but as you can see, it has flowered and it's time to get out of the bed. Anymore. These peas were really delicious. They produced great for us. They still are. But because we have more high dollar crop that we want to put in here, it's their time to come out and get composted. These flowers are lovely. I love the way they look. They have no place in my vegetable bed, so I'm going to transplant them into a pot where I can really appreciate them. I'd really love to point out this star of the show. This lettuce came from a tray pack that was dead and close to being into the compost bin. We planted it, see what it would do, fertilized it, and look how gorgeous it is, ready to go onto your dinner plate. I really like romaine, so I was excited to watch this grow. This looks gorgeous, and it's on its second round. If you look closely in here, you can see where we harvested the first stalk. So that created all these offshoots that we can now harvest and eat as well. I think I might keep the kale. It looks like we only have one with aphids in it. And kale is a continuous producer. You just bust the stalks from the bottom and it'll continue to grow up, and it's a continual harvest plant. This tomato is the star of this bed. We're going to keep her in. However, this garlic, we've been waiting on it for so long, and we're ready to see what it looks like. We're in mid-July around here. It's about time to harvest these babies. This garlic I just pulled looks really great. It's nice and firm. As you can see, all of its buddies, the tips are browning and falling over. I think it's time to harvest them and get them out of here. The trick to pulling garlic is to grab real close at the stem, at the base in the soil, and to give it a nice firm tug. Sometimes it takes two hands. Last one is fun. It is not a garlic. It is an elephant garlic, which is closer to a leek. Let's see how big it is. Look at that bad boy. Bigger than my fist. That's an elephant garlic right there for you. So I plant this garlic in the fall, and I pull it in the summer. And you're really going to want to fertilize these guys in the fall and in the spring because they're not going to be growing much during the winter. Additionally, you're going to want to stop watering them about 2 weeks before harvest so they can get this nice browning going on. And that'll allow you to dry them in a dark, warm, coolish, neutralish room. And it will allow you to eat garlic for the whole year. These raised beds make me really happy. Here, we just have for aesthetics, we have some flowers going on just to make us happy. But here is the real star of the bed for me. It is a grafted tomato. It is grafted onto a nice disease-resistant rootstock with a delicious top part for us to eat. As you can see, she is really flowering right now, so we're going to get some delicious tomatoes here soon. Additionally, we went ahead and seeded some basil below our tomato. So we got lots of basil to snack on. So before I get started ripping everything out, I'm going to take a mental note of what I planted where. These cauliflower are brassicaceae, so I'm not going to plant any more brassicaceae here. And the legumes are nitrogen fixing in their soil, so I'm going to plant our heavy feeders near where I planted them so they can take advantage of their natural biologic processes. This process is known as crop rotation, and it's a really great thing to constantly think about to improve your soil biology. Now we're going to get down to the dirty and the nitty-gritty, and I'm going to start weeding and pulling these bad babies out of here. All right. They're still producing for us, so it's sad, but they gotta go. You want to keep as much soil as you can. You weed as you go. Try to pop up as much as that taproot from those weeds you can. So while weeds in the garden bed can be a nuisance, it's a good indicator that your soil is healthy and it's thriving. It's got moisture in there. Weeds, what are weeds except for a plant in a spot where you don't want it to be? With that logic, those zinnias were a weed to me because they're in my raised bed where I want my vegetables to go, so I'm gonna move them to a pot where they'll no longer be a weed for me. The best thing to do about your weeds is to stay on top of it. Put it in your schedule. Get out there every week. Definitely do not let them flower or you're just gonna cause yourself more issues. Look at that root mass. Little baby Junco. All right. Ugh. It's a little sad, but you know, it's part of the job of being a gardener. What makes it feel better for me is to get it to somebody who has chickens, and then they can continue to enjoy it. It really makes you feel better about pulling your live material. So unfortunately, I did not keep up on my weeding in the last few months since April. I did a great job getting all of them out of here in April, but as you can see, there's some really great mats of weeds going on in here. So because I didn't keep up on it, I added a little more work for myself now, going into the new growing season. Because you just can't leave them there or it's going to become a weed bed. Sometimes when I don't think that I can get thoroughly enough in my weed bed, I like to go through and disturb the top surface layer to kind of disrupt the roots of the current weeds to kind of knock them back, knock their growing back. So we're going to do a little bit of that when we go to amend our soil. Look at that beautiful lettuce. It's a great harvest day here at Shonnard. Now we're going to get started on this back bed. Harvesting our multiple heads of romaine here. Beautiful. Finally, our last lettuce. So we've been very fortunate in this garden to not see much for pests, but you can see here we are having an aphid issue. Because of this, we are going to make an executive decision to pull this one kale out so that the others may thrive without incident of pests. Sorry, baby, but you're going bye-bye. All right, now our beds are all cleaned up from the organic material we no longer want growing in there. We're going to add in our soil amendments and our new soil. And that you're going to see is going to be the garden soil, the Eden Valley with added biochar, and some purely compost. Here we've got our Eden Valley garden soil we're going to add into our raised bed. I'm going to put a little in that bed as well as some as this bed. This garlic has really been growing in here a long time, so we want to help replenish what they took from the soil. In addition to the Eden Valley, we're going to add some purely compost that's really thick with organic material. Great for your blooming flowers and your vegetables. You can really see all the great stuff in there. This is going to help with moisture retention as we go into the summer. Next, we're just going to lightly mix it in and even out the surface. As you can see, I'm kind of only working in the top few inches of the surface level. This is so that I can homogenize those new soils I got in there and disturb the weed root system of the weeds that are still intact in here. Additionally, I can save my back a little bit. Eventually the nutrients will seep down into the rest of the layers. In addition to breaking up the soil to break up the weed roots, it will aerate the soil and increase drainage into your raised beds, breaking up the compaction and allowing your plants to more easily grow throughout the soil. Now that we've added in our soil, we're going to add in some added granular fertilizer. It'll be a slow-release fertilizer to really help our plants get going throughout the summer season. Very high in nitrogen, and really going to push that green growth. I really like this GB Organic tomato and veg fertilizer because it's high in nitrogen and works really great for getting your tomatoes and vegetables going throughout the summer. In this bed, we're going to be planting some watermelon and some cucumbers, which are very hungry plants that are going to need that extra nitrogen to get going in the small window they have to grow. On the back of the bag, you can always find the instructions for mixing into your soil. On here, you can see that for cucumbers and broccoli, which is what we're going to be planting, it's going to suggest mixing 1.5 cups per 10 square feet of growing area for new planting. So we're going to make sure that we get that just right. Another really great thing about this GB Organic is that it makes it really hard to burn your plants with the fertilizer, which is really great. While you should always follow the instructions, it takes a little of the stress out knowing that you have a little leeway to play with. We're going to make sure to fertilize pretty heavily around our already growing plants so that they can take advantage of this fertilizer as well. Next, I'm going to go through and I'm going to scratch the fertilizer into the surface level of the soil as I go through and I even it out and get it ready for planting. Make sure to always pick up straggling weeds that you find. We're going to go ahead and plant these plants here in our raised bed, this first raised bed. It's going to look a little sad at first because we're only planting 2 tiny little plants in them, but they're going to grow to be huge plants. So we're going to do a little lemon cucumber over here, and over here we've got a watermelon. We're going to plant those intentionally in between the spaces where I had the 2 legumes last time, and they're going to spread to take over this whole bed by the time fall comes around. We're going to plant this lettuce where the heavy feeding garlic was because they don't need too much nutrients and they're a good buffer behind garlic. Over here we're going to plant some more of that graffiti purple cauliflower that I really loved. While it's next to the Brassicaceae of the kale, I think they're going to be all right because we had lettuce here before, so we're still kind of doing a little bit of that crop rotation. While they might share a little bit of pests, I'm prepared to take that challenge on. Lettuce babies are. Pop them right out. There's barely a root system on those. So you have to be very delicate, but as soon as they get a hold of that delicious soil and fertilizer, they're really going to take off. The flower have been in their tray packs a little longer, and you can see their root system is much more developed, a little easier to plug right into your soil. Again, I'm going to plant this Brassicaceae right where I just took this kale out, another Brassicaceae, which I wouldn't normally do in the spirit of crop rotation, but today we're going to do it, and we're going to take on the challenges that might come with that because we didn't acknowledge crop rotation. Now for the exciting part, we're going to plant our big boy heavy feeders, which are always fun to watch grow. Now we're going to save all these indication markers. We're going to pop them in our soil so that we know what's growing where, and we'll be able to see just how long it's going to take before we get to start seeing eating watermelons. You got to always make sure to water your babies in directly after planting because they're going to be in shock from the transplanting. So you got to ease some of that with a little bit of moisture. One of the most important things you need to know as a vegetable gardener is to pay attention to the heat of the weather because you're going to have to be watering these bad boys like every day if the temperature is above 80 degrees. They're going to be thirsty and they're going to be hungry. We've already fed them, now we got to make sure they got something to drink. Another really important thing to know as you're watering your vegetables is that everyone's going to be a little bit different. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a different water need to it. And depending on whether it's in a raised bed, in ground, or in a pot, that's going to change its watering needs as well. So you got to always be paying attention to who's thirsty and how often they're going to need watered because it's not all going to be the same and it's not all going to be consistent. On days like today where we have a overcast July morning, we wouldn't even probably have to water if we didn't just transplant these babies. But on a day like next week when we're going to be into the 90s, we're going to have to for sure be watering them or they're going to be dead. As you can see here, I'm hand watering these bad boys. That's because we do not have a drip system in place. If you don't have a drip system, you're really going to have to be paying attention and you're going to have to know who you're working with here. If you're extremely busy and you're going to find yourself out of the house and out of town for a lot of the summer, you might want to consider putting in a drip system just to be sure that you're always going to have your plants watered. If you're new to this or you don't know what you're working with, come into Shonnard's and we'll help you get set up with a drip system. Or if you're like us, just a new hand watering tool. In this bed, it's such a large bed with only these babies in it, so I'm only going to be spot watering around our thirsty new transplanted babies, as if I watered into the rest of the bed, generally like this. Instead of watering my babies, I'm more likely going to be watering the weeds that I just took out, so I just want to concentrate it just to my thirsty cucumber and watermelon. So we fertilized this bed, we amended it with delicious soil for the plants. They're still going to need a little bit of help through the growing season. That granular is a slow release fertilizer, so it'll be there for a while working slowly. But I recommend maybe also using one of these liquid fertilizers. It's much easier for the plant to uptake the fertilizer in a liquid form through its tiny roots. I would recommend fertilizing about every 2 weeks, especially for your hungry feeders like this cucumber here. Feeding every 2 weeks will really help your plant be really healthy to fight off the pests during the growing season, because an unhappy plant throws off these pheromones that calls in the pest. Come eat me, I'm sick, come eat me. So this will help your plants from putting off that I'm sick pheromone and really just make them happy and able to fight off any disease or issue you come across. If you do tend to see some issues in your garden, which is completely normal, especially here in the Willamette Valley, you're likely to see things like worms, moth larvae, slugs, beetles, and aphids. If you do wind up with some pests in your garden, don't freak out. It's completely normal here in the Willamette Valley. I recommend supplying yourself with an arsenal of these products right here. Both are organic, ready, willing, and able to be going to work on your vegetables to help get rid of your pests. Two of the most common insect issues you might see around here in the Willamette Valley is aphids, which can cause deformation of your new growth on your leaves, as well as looking a little nasty and like you don't want to eat it on your vegetables. This is a really easy treatment of that. If you're starting to see holes or bigger issues with your vegetables, I would go to the spinosad, which is a more heavy-duty but still organic product that will help erase those problems. If you would like to learn more about these and your summer garden planting and getting rid of pests, I recommend visiting our YouTube page to watch Darren's video on summer gardening. Whether you're a beginning gardener or an advanced garden lover, we all got to start somewhere, so I recommend just getting out here and getting dirty. Thanks for watching. I'm Angelee over here at Shonnard.